So a couple weeks back, me and a friend of mine were bored on Discord, and we needed something to watch. And I, somewhat on a whim, suggested Arcane, given that I'd heard good things about it for years and had never seen it for, in retrospect, basically no reason. We sat down to watch an episode at about 10 o'clock, and somehow the next day I stumbled into work on 5 hours of sleep. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could a responsible young man such as myself jeopardize my job performance and potentially my career just to watch a couple more episodes of a show on Netflix? Well, I don't know if anyone's told you this, but this show slaps. Arcane genuinely blew me away, episode after episode, action scene after jaw-dropping action scene, dilemma after hair-splitting dilemma. This show is deservedly regarded as one of the best to come out in recent years, and I still think that's underrating it. Now, a couple disclaimers before I jump into things here. One, League of Legends sucks fucking dick. I have not played a single game of League in my life. I have not watched a single game of League in my life. I'll touch on this later, but I genuinely didn't know who in the show was a champ in the game and who wasn't, which is actually probably the better way to experience the show. You do not have to know League lore, you do not have to care about League lore. I hate League, and my friend who has thousands of hours on the game also hates League.
Paul, how many hours do you have on League of Legends?
Ballpark 1,500.
Okay, so given that, would you recommend the game to new players?
League of Legends? Fuck no. It's the worst game I've ever played.
All of this is to say, you do not need to care about League or know about League to enjoy Arcane. Also, there will be copious amounts of spoilers in this video. If you don't want to be spoiled, please click off the video immediately. Arcane has a genuinely amazing story, and it would be a shame to ruin it with spoilers if you haven't already experienced it. With that said, this is why I need to talk about Arcane. Just to get this out of the way, the show is gorgeous. Obviously, the animation itself is top notch, but the presentation of the show is on an entirely different level. There were so many shots in this show where I basically just sat in my chair like this. There are wide angles, there are top-down shots, there's masterful framing. I mean, seriously, I love the shot of Savika smoking, and it's just Silco's empty chair in the background after he dies. I love the shots of Victor and Jace just talking on this little ledge on a building. I mean, the scene where the mage saves Jace's life, I don't need to sell you on this. This is fucking cool. There are so many little directorial flourishes that add tons of character to Arcane, like in episode 1, when Milo is shit-talking Powder. Every time he lets off an insult, the ball he's throwing smacks this metal wall until Vi steps in the way, both of the ball and the verbal barrage. When Vi meets up with Powder for the first time after she breaks out of prison, Powder is literally holding Vi's flare in one hand and the gemstone in the other, teetering between Silco and her sister. And as Vi shows up, she drops the crystal, and it's not on screen again until Caitlyn shows up, and as Powder's doubt creeps in, the crystal's cut back to more and more. There's also the little cheeky entrance by Vi to the last drop in the last episode, where the focus of the shot is this guy selecting a song on a music box, but you can see Vi in the background, and she doesn't actually get revealed until the entire bar is just staring at her, past the guy who we were focused on the entire time. This is without talking about the animation, by the way, which is jaw-dropping on its own. Continuing the trend that Spider-Verse started 5 years ago, this show combines 2D and 3D techniques to great effect. It's definitely not as saturated with those techniques as Spider-Verse is, and you don't get the frame drops with character animation that Spider-Verse or things like Puss in Boots have, but when they're used, these techniques are used to perfection. Just about every time we see things from Powder or Jinx's perspective, there are these jarring cuts and zooms and these strobing, like, scribble effects on the screen, just hammering home how disconnected she is from reality around her. There's also the fight scene with Vi and Jace later in the show, where when a big attack lands, we switch from 3D animation to like a 2D X-ray, where the rest of the frame is black, and the impact of the hit is in this vibrant white and blue that just pops off the background. Episode 7 just randomly has two of the most visually expressive sequences in the entire show, with this graffiti-esque introduction for the firelights and this watercolor collage action panel between Jinx and Echo. And this is without mentioning how well the traditional 3D animation is done, from facial expressions to fight scenes. I mean, I swear to God, half the fights in this show are just people beating the shit out of each other. Like, every time Vi squares up, I swear I'm watching heavyweight boxing where no one is allowed to block.
Well, your guard needs work.
But the thing that really stands out about these fights is that you can feel every punch, every kick, like you're sitting right there. Everything is so fluid. Like, just look at how effortlessly the firelights glide around. That shit is cool. I don't need a reason to like that. Even little things like facial animations have an insane attention to detail. A lot of this show is characters being forced to make decisions that they either don't want to make or grappling with choices that they already have made. And the animation sells these moments so well. Every moment of indecision or pause is accentuated by the emotions these characters are feeling, which you can see not only flash across their faces, but also in their eyes and body language. I swear, these animators had to have had an acting coach assisting in production because the subtle mastery present in these moments is genuinely impressive. It's also worth noting that the music in the show is no slouch either. I know that the Imagine Dragons song has been memed to death at this point, but it is a genuinely good song, and the intro visuals that go along with it are equally impressive. Side note, the actual band is in the show, like they just show up when their song is used in an episode, and I just think that's fucking hilarious. Snakes go so hard. This is a genuine PR song, and I know I already touched on this scene, but when the camera switches to a wide angle, when the song gets hit with reverb, like, come on, that's sick. The show ends with this almost haunting, melancholy track that perfectly embodies what's happening on screen, and it's sung by Sting? I mean, I could go on and on. Pusha T is here, Jid is here. This soundtrack feels like it shouldn't exist for a show that's based on a video game. The non-licensed music is awesome as well. You have slow, pensive tracks, just a piano, full-on orchestra pieces with swelling tones, and bombastic percussion for action scenes. It's safe to say that the music isn't just tacked onto the show like a lot of big productions these days try to do. I blame you, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a genuine compliment to the experience. So I know in my spoiler warning I talked about how good the story and characters are, and it just kind of occurred to me that I've gotten this far without talking about either of them. The characters in Arcane are awesome. Characters that are on the League roster don't get special treatment versus characters that aren't, which A, made Arcane a better experience jumping in blind, and B, allows for a fully rounded out cast that all get their moments to shine. Although, to be fair, even if you haven't played League, it sort of becomes apparent who's in the game, just because their designs sort of scream video game character. I'm looking at you, Jinx. And while I initially assumed that Powder or Jinx would be the main character, the attention is very much spread around. It's sort of a similar situation to things like Star Wars' Andor or Game of Thrones. We have a sort of main character or cast to follow, but a lot of time is spent on the entire cast and their arcs and adventures. I mean, Caitlyn goes from a background character whose parents are more relevant to the plot to a genuine main character with agency who gets Vi out of prison and basically kickstarts half of the plot into action post-time skip. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Our main trio centers around Vi, Powder, and Jace. Vi is the lens through which we see the underground, how it works, how the people there live, and we see their opinions on Topside reflected through her as the show progresses. On the flip side of the coin, Jace is our lens through which we view Piltover. His side of the story grants us insight into the larger politics at play, the attitudes of Topsiders towards not only the Undercity, but each other. Powder, or Jinx I guess, is sort of our wild card. She's the fuse that sets most of the major developments of the story into action. She finds the gemstones in Jace's apartment, sets one off, inadvertently kills Milo and Clagger, raids topside for the gemstone, and nearly kills Caitlyn. She inadvertently causes Vi and Caitlyn to get kidnapped by Echo and the Firelights, and last but not least, gathers Vi, Caitlyn, and Silco at the end of the show, kills Silco, once again on accident, and to top it all off, launches the shark nuke at the council. I'll come back to that scene, I haven't forgot about it. Whatever Jinx does has genuine consequences for just about everybody involved, and in some cases actually ends up involving more characters that weren't involved previously. Our main villain is Silco, who is one of the best characters in the show. Notice how I said characters, because Silco is a genuine character. At first when he shows up, he seems like sort of a mustache-twirling, scheming lowlife, the kind of villain that's meant to be universally despised. And when this dude first shows up, he's menacing. Like, the way his introductory scene with Deckard is framed and shot, he's an intimidating presence immediately. His aura doesn't let up when killing Grayson and Benzo either, and it isn't until he kidnaps Vander that we get a glimpse at his motivations, and a peek into his past with Vander. At this point, even though he acknowledges his respect for Vander, and has a genuine conversation with him, he's still firmly in pure evil plot device territory until he sees Powder crying. At this point, I thought he was just going to kill a kid because they wanted us to hate him that much. But then Powder jumps into his arms, and you see this actually has an effect on him, and he ends up comforting her, and man, this was such a holy shit scene for me. This is where Arcane fully hooked me, because there's such a human element on display here that just resonates with you, whether you wanted to or not. Silco gradually gets more characterization as the show goes on, and we see more of what happened between him and Vander, although it isn't ever fully explained. I like that he shows genuine emotion, like surprise when he learns Vi is alive, fucking rage when she escapes. Like, bro, chill. And even fear when Savika nearly kills him. It's due to these little moments that his monologue at the end of the series hits so hard. He's been given the keys to the kingdom. Jace has promised him independence. All he has to do is give up Jinx. So he sits at a statue of Vander and ruminates on his circumstances, finally admitting what he couldn't understand years ago, he finally understands now.
Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
Silco could have been pure evil. He could have just been a manipulating douchebag, but he isn't. And the show is so much better for it. On the sort of second tier of characters, we have Victor, Caitlyn, and Mel. Victor is my favorite character in the show.
Counselor, wait a minute, it's
what a
into my
surprise.
bedroom.
See you.
How could I have...
He saves Jace's life early on, and the two become a super genius combo who are actually really fun to watch. Victor sort of acts as Jace's moral compass and represents the commitment to progress and well-being that Jace is slowly forced to abandon as the show progresses. Caitlyn, originally a borderline background character with a dozen lines, becomes an awesome foil to Vi after she gets her out of jail after the time skip. Pairing these two together was genius. Vi exposes Caitlyn to the reality of the underground, and as the two investigate, we see Caitlyn gradually become more and more abhorred by the conditions of the Undercity. And we see Vi gradually soften up to Caitlyn as she starts to realize that, yeah, topsiders are people too. Even an enforcer, from the same group of people that killed her parents, has the capacity for empathy and understanding. These two represent not just the massive divide between top and bottom,
Except maybe half the size.
but the opportunity to bridge that divide, not with deals or power struggles, but with genuine trust and cooperation. Lastly is Mel, who I'm going to be honest, I did not like in my first watch, especially when she got with Jace. Upon my rewatch for this video though, I've sort of warmed up to her. At first she appears to just be a cutthroat businesswoman, only invested in advancing her own interests and getting a leg up on her family. She's the one who gives Jace and Victor a chance to demonstrate hex tech, and the one who pushes Jace into politics, and the one who encourages him to engage in the corruption he sneaks to stuff out. At this point, I'm basically describing Nancy Pelosi, but once Mel's mom shows up, we get more scenes to flush Mel out. She supported Hextech obviously to make money, but also to progress society, and it's clear she pushes Jace to lead, not because she wants a puppet, but because she genuinely believes he's the best guy for the job. And when it comes down to it, she makes the choice to pursue peace with the Underground, and in turn cast aside the chance to rejoin the family that originally cast her out. The supporting cast is fantastic here too. Seeing Echo evolve from a goofy kid to a hardened gorilla is cool and sad at the same time. Heimerdinger is annoying as hell at first, but you can see he actually believes the decisions he makes are for the greater good, and him and Echo linking up should be a fun duo to watch going forward. Marcus's story is heartbreaking to watch play out as he juggles his duty to his men and his deals with Silco. Even Mel's mom gets a fair amount of depth in just one conversation with her daughter.
Because you weakened me. I couldn't endure the look in your eyes whenever I made the decisions, the necessary decisions to keep us safe.
Vander is fun to watch, and in general, just a pretty chill guy. As a mentor character, he's digging his own grave from episode 1, but his death is still impactful because you get enough time to actually like him, and Milo and Clagger going out with him is pretty unexpected. Even the more one-note characters are fun in their own right, like Saviko and Benzo.
You think my head is thick?
Just past the average.
As far as plot goes, Arcane is tight. I don't want to go too far into plot analysis, seeing as how the story is unfinished, and I fear it'll devolve into a plot summary despite my best efforts. A lot of the show is just placing characters in dilemmas, seeing how they react, and how they not only make the choices they're forced to make, but how they deal with those choices after the fact. Vander is pinned between his city wanting to fight back against Piltover and his deal with the Enforcers. Marcus is pinned between his duty and his deals with Silco. Powder is stuck deciding between Vi and Silco, and the list goes on and on. At one point, Jace, Victor, and Mel are discussing the use of hex tech in weaponry, and Jace is basically forced to choose between the man who saved his life, his partner, and the woman who made his life what it is. He's understandably a little overwhelmed.
I need to think.
The writing here is sharp. It's witty when it needs to be.
Will you please stop hovering?
I'm not sure how to do that, sir.
It's philosophical when it needs to be.
In the pursuit of great, we fail to do good.
And it's raw and emotional when it needs to be.
I told you to stay away!
There are so many fantastic moments in this show where the writing, animation, music, and voice acting are all in perfect sync, creating some of the best scenes I've seen in television in a long time. When Powder decides to light off Vi's beacon and the music swells and we get these fantastic shots of her standing on the precipice, desperate for a hand to reach out and help her, only for the beacon to die out and the music stops, Man, this shit is so good. As good as Arcane is and these big moments, it's equally as good, if not better, in its quieter ones. Simple conversations between characters can convey such depth and emotional resonance.
Do you contemplate death, Professor?
Subtle touches in these scenes sell everything. When Jace is giving the Progress Day speech, the mic feedback is used to convey his uncertainty to great effect. When Jace starts doing politics, we get this great juxtaposition of him talking to council members while Heimerdinger enjoys the show, the music swelling over the conversation, because we don't really need to know what's being said. We get it. This is a perfect example of show don't tell, something that the show does extremely well. A great example of this is the masks Topsiders wear when they go to the Undercity. Early on, we see Marcus put his on the second he steps outside, and immediately the audience can get that Topsiders need help to breathe the air of the Undercity. In a worse show, we'd have a 2-minute exposition scene of characters explaining this concept, and it would just kill the pacing. I could go on and on about how good the writing in this show is, but I don't want this video to be 4 hours long, so I'm going to move on. Suffice it to say, some of the lines in this show go stupidly hard.
You're just a small man in a little hole the world forgot to bury.
Ending time! The final scene between Vi, Jinx, Caitlyn, and Silco is fantastic. Not only is the actual setting for this final showdown appropriately eerie, the scene has tension so thick you can cut it with a knife. Silco's death at the hands of Jinx is handled perfectly, and her sobbing apologies are soul-crushing, no matter how immoral you consider either character's actions to be.
Don't cry. You're perfect.
The real revelation of this scene is how Jinx's perspective is portrayed. The entire show, and even in this scene, every time we see things through her mind's eye, it's jarring. The visuals are strobing, the cuts are quick, and she's constantly arguing with imaginary versions of Milo and Clagger. She's doing it in this very scene. She even shoots the Milo mannequin. The second Silco dies, though, it all stops. She's calm, there's no jump cuts, no strobing animation, no arguing. She's no longer being torn between worlds, stuck between who Silco wants her to be and who Vi wants her to be. She is who she is, and it's right here where she makes what to this point has been the most pivotal decision in the entire series. It's not accidental. She didn't make a device that failed to work or worked too well. She didn't inadvertently hurt someone while doing something else. She fully made the choice to use the gemstone to attack the council of her own volition on her own terms. This scene is fantastic. The visuals are stunning, the shots are creative, the emotion is raw, and the music is haunting. This is what animation was made for, and if you're looking for something better than this, then you're going to be looking for a pretty damn long time.